You created the crisis. You don't
Mm,
get hero points for
sure you don't.
creating the problem. You
Sure
not
you don't.
to me. You don't. You shouldn't have
Why?
done it because you are a smart Black man. You're very thoughtful. You're very intentional. You were self-serving in that moment. So you created this mess, and now I'm supposed to give you points because now you apologize and you're going to handle the mess that you created. F you.
Welcome to another episode of I Take Your Point podcast. I'm John Dunson, joined by my lovely co-host, a young lady who clearly is getting ready to go and party like it's 1959.
Wow.
Thank you guys again for joining us for what is probably going to be a very interesting conversation because there's so much that is going on. So let's go ahead and jump into it. There's a pattern that begins once you spend time specifically in institutions. And at first it looks like a coincidence, then it starts to look like the culture. Eventually you realize that there's something deeper that's going on in the structure. Over the last couple of weeks, we've talked about a couple of things, and this series is called Carrying the Weight, because every system eventually routes responsibility towards someone who can stabilize it. Someone that could be a leader, that could be someone who may not have started a movement, but is typically the most competent person in the room. Sometimes it's a family member, sometimes it's an entire community. But the pattern is consistent. When systems experience pressure, the weight moves, and almost always that weight moves toward the people who have the capacity to absorb it. Now, carrying the responsibility is not the problem. Builders carry responsibilities every day. That's what adulthood looks like. That's what leadership looks like. The problem appears when responsibility quietly becomes extraction, when competence becomes infrastructure, and reliability becomes expectation. So when the system stops asking whether you can carry the weight and simply assumes that you will, that's the part that we have to be able to address. So this is the third part in the series, and it's about the 6-part audit that we're looking at, not necessarily the emotional aspect of carrying the weight, but more importantly, dissecting the structure. So we talked about in the first episode, intent versus, we talked about how it is that words matter and how it is that once you say certain things, your intentions may have been one thing, but the way that they were received and the impact of that is typically going to be felt by the community. And then last week, we talked about the theater with respect to reform and how companies can put out what it is that they say they're going to do, and then they can pivot toward, or we actually see what it is that they're doing with respect to their actions. We did not know when we started this series that we were going to have the events of the past week unfold in terms of the culture, but it provided for us a thumbnail and a data point and a live receipt in terms of everything that we're dealing with right now. And the issue that we're talking about is the Target boycott. And before we move on to discuss that in detail, Ms. Lynn, have you had an opportunity to look at some of the stuff that's been going around about Target and your favorite pastor?
Yes, I have. And you know what, I extend appreciation to you for sending me additional information on that this morning, because that made me realize I needed to go for a run. I hate running, but it was to release those chemicals, dopamine, serotonin, because I knew that this was probably going to get heated. So yes, I'm aware of it, and I've got thoughts.
So here's the issue that I'm having. And again, we want to try to remove as much as possible the emotional aspect of it.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll just go ahead and exit stage right now.
Understand that from an emotional standpoint, things can be a little heated. And so let's talk about specifically, and we'd like to deal with facts here. So the facts are that the Target boycott began roughly in January 2025, when Target announced that it was rolling back several of its DEI commitments. Now, those commitments had originally been announced in 2020 that came because of the incident with George Floyd in Minneapolis. And that's key because it happened in Minneapolis, the home of Target. And that issue, or that promise that Target made, included a $2 billion pledge toward Black-owned businesses and representation on their board, and increased product participation with respect to the partnerships that they had and the placement of those products within those stores. Target has spent years building a brand identity around cultural alignment. Now, obviously, for Black folk, Target was, at least in the circles that I associated with, Target was that thing, that shit. You went to Target over a Walmart because they did support the culture, because they were doing some things that Black creators and Black consumers and Black families appreciated with respect to products that they were placing in their stores and the partnerships that they had. So over the course of years, Target had developed what many in the culture considered to be street cred, we'll say. So the pledge wasn't just a PR move, it was about the relationship. Now, when Target reversed course, that relationship broke. And there was immediate reaction in terms of that relationship and how it impacted two separate institutions. One was the organizers, the grassroots organizers in Minneapolis that were impacted on the day-to-day by the Target promise. That was led by the sister Nakima Levi Armstrong, Monique Colyars-Doty, as well as Jelani Hussein. They launched a national boycott that I believe was roughly late January, roughly around January 24th to January 25th, where they put out the documentation asking individuals within the community what they thought should happen. It was then announced that beginning on February 1st, there was going to be a national boycott of Target by them locally. Okay, first data point. In a subsequent post, Nina Turner and the sister who was working with her also put out an email saying that they were going to boycott Target on, again, February 1st. Two different boycotts. One was local with respect to the individuals who lived in the community. One was national with respect to individuals who's always shown up when there are issues within the African American community. I don't agree with Nina Turner on a whole host of shit. But what she does do is she steps in or lend voice to issues that are of concern to not only Black folk, but specifically to Black women, Black families, and things that she believes in. Now, as a part of that, the third part was your wonderful pastor, Jamal Harrison Bryant, a year ago.
We're going to start looking at pronouns as we go through this thing. Your is a strong word. Carry on.
So Pastor Jamal Bryant in his congregation, which is based here in Atlanta, decided that he was going to, within his congregation and his community, he asked his parishioners to do a 40-day fast with respect to Target. That started Lent, which would have been March in 25. Now, those three things all coexisted at the same time. Those three things that started, it cannot be denied that the largest voice, the loudest voice, the most recognizable voice in the room belonged to Jamal Harrison Bryant. That is without question. So the fact that he lent his voice to that movement put gasoline on the movement expanding and becoming more national. So I take the point that the organizers, in terms of the grassroots, had a legitimate concern that Target disrespected them and was playing in their face locally. But there were also individuals who did not know who they were. So let's be blunt here. They did not know who those individuals were. They did know Nina Turner. They did know Jamal Harrison Bryant. And because they did know them, they participated in it. And so when Pastor Bryant came out last week and said the boycott with respect to the fast is over, there was some confusion with respect to whether he was talking about the fast that he was the one responsible for versus the boycott of Target that the other individuals based in Miss Armstrong's organization, based in Minneapolis, was responsible for. And so there were a lot of shots fired verbally between Miss Armstrong and Pastor Bryant's team. And so that's where we find ourselves today. And that's a part of when we talk about, again, leadership and communication and making certain that everyone is on the same page and making certain that individuals have different roles to play. That is how we need to look at this. It's not about feelings. I get that in some ways individuals can feel that they have been overlooked, or they can feel that they've been disrespected, or that they can feel that they're not getting the credit due. I get that. I take that. Look, okay, we'll give individuals credits for the fact that they are on the front lines with respect to their community. But for the voice that this man lent to the project, I think we'd be hard pressed to say it would have the resonance that it has. What say you?
Oh, there's so much, John. First off, I realized I needed to run another couple of miles. Let me center myself. This is, and I understand what you're saying. I understand that, and I appreciate the timeline and the players, because I think that there is some misunderstanding with that, right? The thing for you to say, let's take emotion out, I take issue with that. It is emotional, and it's always emotional. And we're not talking about the relationship of Black men and Black women, but I am.
Okay.
Again, we're going to do pronouns. And so when we feel disrespected, we felt unheard, and we're working from a basal brain, and you want us to move into this higher order thinking, not acknowledging how we feel, how we receive things, then there's conflict. So before you decide you want to move into, well, that just happened and let's just move on, you need to address the wrong that we felt. You can address that. And for Mr. Bryant, I'm going to go ahead and call him Mr. Bryant today. He loves to have these books that he will do in the congregation. Let's read a book. I think he may want to start with The Art of an Apology.
So hold on, I take issue with that because he did put out a strong apology.
Again, he did not put out a strong apology. He put out an apology. I listened to his apology, and I want to put a pin in what you just said because I want to go back to it. But his apology was, okay, yes, I think I was wrong, but look at all the things that we did. Black man, again, let's go ahead and address the issue at hand, full stop. If you want to then pivot to something else in a different situation, feel free. But essentially what you did was you made your apology and then you did the but or however, which negates the apology. Of course you don't. You and I fundamentally do not agree on what a good apology is. Because here's my thing. When you wrong someone and it's loud, I want that apology to match that energy.
Okay, so hold on. Now let's push back there because the original, I will say that and full disclosure,
I don't care if he's frat. I don't give a rat's ass about your Kappas.
Okay.
I don't care.
Full disclosure. When you sent me, because you alerted me to it, and this is how we receive things. When it happened, you sent me the text and you say, it was something, I'm paraphrasing you here. You can keep me honest. You said, should we be concerned about this? This is last week, right? And I said, I didn't take it as a big deal because I was like, look, you claim the victory and you move on.
But I didn't, the problem that I said was I didn't hear the victory. Two things. So I'm going to go back to what you said and you asked me to respond to. That he ended the boycott. Originally, it was a 40. Okay, it was originally a 40-day fast last year. Do you know how to count? It's been past 40 days.
So again, he extended it to 400 days.
I'm sorry?
He extended it to 400 days. He came on. Had you been listening to
the sermons,
you would have known
explicit and say for our church.
That's what he did.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't.
He literally said that in the apology that he did on video. He gave an apology on video.
Let me just.
And he said.
Before I get. You know, I'm wearing this little thing that says Scorpio on it. Maybe I should take that off because
you're emotional. Look, this is business.
John, let's visit that later because I want to talk about this emotional thing. And I want to talk about this emotional thing in the framework of Black men and Black women. So we will revisit that. However, what I'm talking about right now is it just reminds me of other movements where Black women start the movement. Black Lives Matter, the bus boycott, even with back in the civil rights movement, Black women started it, and then Black men, because of whatever, they have a platform, they're able to amplify it. Cool. I appreciate you doing that. I appreciate you, but you still need to then give the recognition to the Black women that did it. Because then what happens is that you decide, you know what, I'm going to move on. You go on and take it now. Because it's either hard, boring, or whatever it is. I've moved on. Now you can have it. Okay, you can have it now. I'm not going to lend any more resources to it. So bye.
I don't think that's fair. I know you don't.
Because you know why? Because you're a Black man.
I will say this. The way that he handled the initial communication by flying to DC, giving the press conference, along with Tina Turner and Miss Mallory, who again, two separate. That's why I had
to make sure he could have done that in the beginning. He never separated. It was all one
No,
thing.
That's not true.
Yes, it was, John. Yes, it was.
He did separate.
He didn't separate anything. He didn't explicitly separate anything because I didn't even know about those other two people. All I knew about was him and his big mouth and his big platform and his flashy clothes. I'm over this pastor. Yes, I am. I didn't even listen to him today. So There you go.
He didn't preach
That's
today.
why I
Yes,
didn't. You know I don't like that. So it doesn't matter. I don't care. I'm done.
until next week.
No,
What he did say, and he took a shot today, and because he's friend, he's got to take a shot. But what he said was, look, it's not about credit. I don't give a damn about credit.
because you know why you don't give a damn about credit? Because you got the credit. That's why you don't give a damn about the credit, because you already got the credit.
Okay, so let's get back on the main issue. The issue for me is this was a crisis of leadership in terms of communication. The other thing that came up when I listened to Roland Martin's interview with...
And I took extreme issue with that man. He's the reason why I started running today.
Okay, first of all, Roland gave her a platform.
Roland is an interrupter. He's dismissive. He was rude.
He was not. She was rude.
He was
She was
extremely rude. He's just like, you do the same thing to me. You interrupt me, you overtalk me, and then you try and say, well, let's just move on. No, we ain't moving on until I'm finished. We'll move on when I say we move on, not when you say we move on. But you do the exact same thing. So, of course, you didn't take any issue. He was extremely dismissive to her. Extremely.
I thought she came off as a hothead. And
Wait, we're getting ready to start getting into it right now. I can't wait. Thank you, sir, because you just set me up. Let me just talk to you a little bit about Black men and Black women. When we have issue and we tell you that we have an issue, and I'm going to compare it. So any other woman that I mentioned in here, sorry, when we do it, we're angry, we're aggressive, we're hostile. We need to take a Valium. When a Latina does it, she's fiery. She's hot. She's sexy. Woo! Look at her. When an Italian does it, look at the fire. My God, why is it the same behavior appreciated with a different type of woman, but with a Black woman, I'm hostile? Three of us are pissed.
Okay, I will say this. I will say that in listening to Roland's interview, I thought Roland restrained himself very well.
Okay, the only way he didn't, the way he restrained himself is by not hanging up the phone on her. But he didn't allow, he needed to, I know you would have, and you know what I would have done? Got that ticket that I keep for Atlanta, and you and I would have been, you know what's going to happen. I just keep an emergency ticket to Atlanta just in case I need to hop on a plane and give you the what's for.
That's violence. That's threat.
It ain't violence. We need to, eye to eye, we need to see. We need to.
So hold on. Here's the issue that I have. The issue that I have was, and I take her point that it was a local issue and it was going to impact them locally. I think everyone agrees with that. But again, I say, but for Nina Turner and Jamal Harrison Bryant getting involved and lending their voice to it, it would not have had the success that it had. Now,
you can say
there should have been, hold on. There should have been communication between the camps to decide what is success going to look like. What came out of the interview that this young lady had with Roland was that she clearly has issues with Jamal Harrison Bryant and Nina Turner. And that came through loud and clear with respect to the animus that she had toward them. Animus. And I get it.
Oh, I love that word, animus.
I get it. But I also understand. Sir? Yeah, after I say this, but I also understand.
Thank you, kind sir, for letting me know my place. I appreciate it, sir. What else can I do for you? Can I make you some pancakes?
Yes, thank you. That during the civil rights movement, there were factions that did not get along. Dr. King did not get along with SNCC, did not get along with other, and they were all rolling in the same direction, but they had different ways of going about it. And so from that standpoint, going back to intent and impact, I will call Fred out for having terrible leadership within that moment where he flew and had that news conference. He should have coordinated with the team in Minneapolis. But I also want to give him credit for how he has handled it during the crisis in terms of, saying, I fucked up.
You created the crisis. You don't get hero points for creating the problem. To me, you don't. You shouldn't have done it because you are a smart Black man. You're very thoughtful. You're very intentional. You were self-serving in that moment. So you created this mess, and now I'm supposed to give you points because now you apologize and you're going to handle the mess that you created. F you.
Okay. We're going to have to agree to disagree.
We're not getting ready to get off this because I got something to say.
So I will say this, though, about the community, because at the end of the day, I do agree with the fact that this is about Minneapolis and this is about what they are going through and how that community over the last 7 years or so has been impacted by some tragic events, whether you're talking about George Floyd, whether you're talking about Target, and now you're talking about the riots and the ICE stuff. There's a lot going on in that community. And so I get that emotions are high. That said, you can't, and this is the part that bothered me more about the Roland thing. When she said Nina Turner and Jamal Harrison Bryant are not welcome in Minneapolis. You don't control that. You don't dictate who is going to come to your city. You don't
And
have
you don't
that.
dictate when you're going to end a boycott that you didn't even start.
Well, that is true. That is true. That is, I will concede that point. But you did not do it by yourself. And so to have the arrogance to think that, okay, I'm the one who needs credit because my organization started this and my organization founded this, then that's just wrong as well. You need other individuals to be able to amplify your message so that you can have success. Yes, ma'am.
May I challenge you?
You always do. Why would
I
you
just
ask?
want to ask you to consider this. What is the difference when a Black person has an idea and a white person amplifies it and becomes the face of that idea? Because we talked about this and you were like, how dare you take a Black person's idea? Facebook are gonna go to hell. But now,
Why do I gotta sound like? Why
well,
do I sound like Martin Luther King when you're giving?
I don't know. It sounded good, though, didn't it? On this mountain. But when it is a white person doing the exact same thing, you are up in arms. But when it happens with a Black woman and a Black man, she needs to get over it and stop being emotional. Sir,
You know
please
why?
help me
You
to
know why?
Ooh, can't help.
You know
I
why?
cannot wait to hear this.
Because one is in the family and moving the family forward, and one is outside of the family.
Okay, so but here's the thing with that family dynamic. It seems to always be directed at a Black woman.
Well, there's only Black women and Black men.
So why?
I don't know.
What's that?
If we're talking about the family,
So
only.
what I'm saying is, if you can't protect your Black queens within that family, and other people are coming after your Black queens, so help me to understand what your C player purpose is.
Okay,
Help us to understand.
I will say this. That's a valid point. And we talk about the fact that if we talk about Black women, and we did not want to talk about this as a part of this, but this is where you're going. If we're talking about Black women carrying the load and having that invisible that is being carried, yes, it does come off as chauvinism. I will say that some of the ways that this has been covered, some of the things that have been said, it's a little male chauvinist. I will concede that part. And I will concede that there's a lot of animus that came through with respect to Black women feeling that here you had a situation where a Black man coming in and trying to usurp something that he did not start, and more importantly, take credit for something he did not start, and then decide that he was going to end it when he was satisfied with what was achieved. And I can see how the sister could have been put upon with that.
And
So,
in the words of the great Sophia, I didn't had to fight my brothers. I had to fight my husband. I had to fight these white people. I damn sure ain't getting ready to fight my husband or the man in this house. Like, you just need to stop. You need to protect us. You need to think about what you're doing. You need to also think about how it's presenting out into this world. If you don't protect us, you don't support your own Black queen, don't get mad when we go over there to talk to Chad.
Okay, so here's where I want to land on this part.
You'll land where I say land, sir. This is my plane too.
So here's the part that I want to land on. I get that the idea was started someplace, but to have that faith infrastructure, and it was the church, for everything that everyone wants to say, it was the Black church that gave fuel to this thing becoming what it became.
It was Jamal Bryant, who is a celebrity and has an amplified voice. He gave it. It wasn't the Black church. It could have been my little Black church down the street. Nothing would have happened. It was him.
It was his church. That's his church.
It was him.
Okay,
it was him, because he is on every media outlet with his flashy clothes. Now I'm just going to talk about his wife's dress. Now, just kidding. That dress is still cute. It was all of that he has access because he's
a faith leader, though.
He's a what?
He's a faith.
Yeah, he just happens to be a faith leader, but he is more than that. He is more than, my girlfriends are always saying when I, like talking about Pastor Jamal, they were like, girl, he's got shenanigans. And I'm like, I don't follow a man. I follow what he can provide to me.
Okay, All
So,
right, so
but he's got shenanigans. He's always been a shenanigan.
so let's go there, because part of what the issue that a lot of the stuff that's being posted on social media is about is those shenanigans.
Well, he's a
And it's not
shenaniganer. He is not. He is a shenanigan. And so this is part of his shenanigans. Like, and you can't separate the man,
true you
the
can.
church, from his shenanigans because it's all together. He brings in his fiery rhetoric. Everything brings people in, and he brought me in. Because I'm not about this. I ain't trying to sit there and listen to an hour or anything, nothing, unless they're talking about donuts. Like, I'm not doing it. He brought me in because he's a dynamic speaker. He's flashy. He is unapologetic. That's why they have him there, because he is who he is, not because he's talking about 1 Corinthians 17 and 22. That's not it. Anybody can talk. I can talk about 1 Corinthians 17 and 22.
All right, so let's end it there. We're not going to agree to disagree. We're going to have to agree to disagree on that.
We'll agree that you're wrong, as per usual.
Part of when we look at the cultural aspect and we look at, again, carrying the load, you and I are both the oldest of the kids that our parents have, and the responsibilities that the oldest child has that falls on him or her to be able to either help raise their siblings, which I know you did in some aspect, mediate conflict. I know you didn't, because you started the conflict with respect to most of the things that happened. I was more of a mediator, but taking responsibility for a lot of things. Psychologists call that parentification. The oldest child, in some ways, serves as the surrogate parent for the younger siblings. What say you about that?
I can say this, and this is no disrespect. I have all the admiration for my parents. They had me very young. So my mom got pregnant with me when she was in high school. So we were essentially just growing up together. And my sister, 22 months younger than me, and then my brother is 10 years younger than me. So my brother always says he has 3 mothers because we parented him. For me, I am just a natural, I guess, leader, caregiver. And so I just would always be very, very protective of my siblings, very protective. But you're right, I was not the mediator because I had extremely high expectations for both of them. My sister was the mediator, the middle child. She's the one that would be rational. She would be the one that would look at both sides of things. My brother and I were both competing for the spotlight, so we were at odds. Yes, again, he's 10 years younger than me. I don't care, I'll fight you. But I had such high expectations for them that I always wanted them to succeed. So no matter what they wanted, I don't care what they wanted, I would work for them. When I started my job, I would give them part of my paycheck because I wanted them to have everything I had, and I wanted them to be taken care of. Always. I remember my brother was probably 19 or 20. And I would always send him money, always. Oh, go get this, go buy this, go take your girlfriend out. And so he wrote this beautiful letter to me, and he said, if you don't stop treating me this way, I'm never going to become a man. Do not send me any more money. And I was like, okay. But I always felt like I needed to take care of them. And the whole family, like the whole family. When my mom and dad decided they were getting a divorce, I think I told you that we had no idea that they were even having problems in the first place. I felt the onus of protecting my siblings, making sure that they were okay. A lot of the things that they did or they didn't do was because I said it. I dictated the way that they navigated through this. I had more influence over my brother and sister than my mom and dad.
And amazingly, that same trait that you exhibited then, you try to have it with respect to me and others.
What do you mean by that? Just having higher expectations, and so
No,
bring you out of C to B and A. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want you to be a C player all your life. Fake sorry. I'm not bossy. I'm just, I see an opportunity, and if I see that you have talent, I want to help you reach that talent. So if you're just going to be a C player and you're happy doing that, well, so be it. I know that there are people in this world that love your C playerness. I'm not one of them. So move on.
Okay. And so we see at a young age where the competence that you showed at that age in some ways is viewed as a deterrent or hindrance for your younger siblings. And it creates a lot of pressure for the oldest child. And the thing that I always think about is that competence, though, does bring that responsibility gene that you talked about, where you feel that you're responsible for everyone or everything. And that's a lot of burden and a lot of pressure that an individuals can put on themselves. And that means that you have to make certain that you're carving out A, time for yourself, and B, that you're not taking that and bleeding that into other areas of your life. The third part with respect to culture that I want to talk about is when you are a part of the sandwich generation, when you have all the parents and you have younger kids and you're responsible for the front end and the back end. And you have to be the mother. At the same time, you have to deal with parents that may be aging, and we're at that age now where you are. And this doesn't have to be an older sibling. It can be any sibling within the family that is a part of that sandwich generation where you're raising your kids at the same time you have aging parents. What say you about that?
Yeah, it's such an interesting position to be put in, because my mom and I grew up together. I knew she was the mom. Like, I didn't think that she was my friend. I never thought that until I got older. And so we're navigating through it now because she lives with me and it's her being the mother. And sometimes I think that she reverts back to me thinking that I'm 15. And I'm like, so I'm not. So you're going to have to stop. And so it's trying to make sure that you're being respectful of them as your parent. But you also, for me, it's making sure that he is making great decisions. And my dad too. My dad lives in Oklahoma. Making sure that both of them are taken care of. And then a lot of times they will call me, hey, Lynn, how do I do this? How do I do that? And I'm like, do you not have other children? Like, I'm confused why I'm responsible for all of this. And we talked about this a little bit with Soul Food and Terry, that there's just not a lot of space that at least I feel, for me to have a nervous breakdown, or for me to be vulnerable, or for me to be sick. The last meeting I had, everybody got sick, and they were like, hey, did you get sick? And I said, no, I'm not allowed to get sick. Like, I have no room for sickness in my life. Like, I told myself when I had children, you're not allowed to get sick. So I don't get sick, because who's going to do I feel so much responsibility to do things. And of course, I have a son in college, and then I have a son at home. And so I feel responsible for that. So you're right. That little time that you do have sometimes is filled with guilt. Like, should I be allocating that to this part of the sandwich or the other part of the sandwich? Where do I fit in? That's why I take my hour with my therapist, and it's all about me.
Good for you. Good. Looking at the data, almost 25% of the population that falls into that sandwich generation, where you're dealing with aging parents, and at the same time you have kiddos that you are trying to navigate through the world. Which brings us to this story. You remember Doge and the purge that they did with the government? This week it came out during one of the hearings that these 21, 22-year-olds were using ChatGTP, and they gave the prompt to ChatGTP to go in and identify all the projects and grants that had DEI that were tagged to them. So they used that as a prompt. ChatGTP came back with a lot of programs that had that attached to them. And they were like, okay, let's cut them. Every last one of them, let's cut.
Heavy, lazy ass side.
So here's some of the projects that were cut. Holocaust education, Italian American archives, Native American language preservation, a museum for HVAC preservation in the state of North Carolina. So there were 100 million in grants that were terminated. 65% of the National Endowment for Humanities was laid off. Who paid the brunt of that? Those communities where those grants were being allocated, and more importantly, being put to use to fund those programs within the organization. When we think about politics and we think about how it is that specifically minority communities are carrying the load by decisions that are being made by individuals who couldn't give a damn, that's one of the receipts that we're talking about. What say you about that?
Sometimes when you think about that, like a lot of the cuts, like government got rid of a lot of administrative roles, right, that were doing that work. And so now they're using AI to supplement and shore up the gaps from those people that are no longer there. We've talked about this before. AI is a tool. It is not a human. And so it's still going to require someone, a human, to to go in and do QA. They have to do quality analysis, quality assurance, and they still need to look at it and still make human decisions because this is a machine. And so I think that when these policies are now shifted to communities, I have to think, like, is it a structural design that, is shifting the cost to individuals, or is it a unintended consequence that it's just made for one goal and then downstream it creates some issues? I tend to think that with education, with these policies that we're talking about with Doge and cutting the DEI, that it's a structural design, that they designed it that way. Now you take care of it, but you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the amplification, you don't have the funding, you don't have the resource. Did these programs fail?
Yeah, and unfortunately, when you think about the individuals that are being impacted, Len is working at that museum, and that museum no longer has grant funding to be able to afford you as an employee. Now you're in the employment line.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Or if you use that to take your kiddo to the museum to learn certain things, you don't have that cultural aspect now in the community that could be a draw for your kids in terms of their education.
And so the whole thing is that there's no thought behind it.
All right.
Like, there might be thought, but I have to say that it is you talk about emotion, that it is a decision that's made, and it looks great, especially in a political climate. Look what I did. I got rid of all the DEI. Well, what does that actually mean for the people that are impacted? Like you said, that museum worker, that community where that museum worker was putting in or paying for stuff, and now they don't have the money to put into the community. Like, there's so many things that a real leader would think about when they're making decisions, that it's not A to B, it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Like, it goes all the way down. You have to look and have a systems mind in order to make decisions that are going to be impactful to individuals and communities. That's my opinion. People are just making wild decisions without thinking about the throughput. You're not a leader, in my opinion.
So when you think about the politics of it, and you think about the cuts that are being made, the other one that jumps out is both of us attended university. I attended that great university called.
And I was at Enid Community College.
You were at Enid Community College, and I attended Howard University.
Okay, so then I don't even know why I should be participating in this conversation. I'll go ahead and step out and get something to drink, and you can continue by yourself. Okay, bye.
So speaking of higher education, it is now estimated that Americans carry roughly $1.7 trillion in student loan debt. I was fortunate enough to not have to rely on a lot of student loans, but I did have to rely on some. As a part of the big ugly bill that was passed last year, part of what it did is it capped student loans that individuals could borrow. And I get that we don't want to burden individuals and add to the student loan process. But in doing that, you look at the individuals who are most impacted, because those are the individuals who may be the individuals who take out more student loans. It's going to be kiddos that are coming from families that don't have that safety net, that don't have the financial resources. And so from that standpoint, you're then shifting the burden back on them to get involved with some of these predatory lenders with respect to the higher rate interest loans that they may have to take. What say you?
Yeah, of course. And so when you do shift that financial responsibility back from public institutions to individual households, of course, it's going to be the households that don't have access to that money just to pay for it, right? Because who would want to take out a loan if you can just pay for it, right? We don't want that. And so then you think about the implications of that. So now those students may decide, I'm not going to go to university. So that's going to impact that generational wealth and the opportunities that are available to them. Now, again, you don't have to go to school. You don't have to obtain a degree to be successful. I don't believe that all the time, but it's going to have a real financial impact on those communities. And so is it a system design or unintended consequences? And unfortunately, I just land on that's the way it's designed to do, because we don't want, if you go to a university, you're probably going to start thinking and questioning things. You know, like those slaves that wanted to read. Do you need to read? I'll go ahead and just tell you don't need to read. I'll tell you what it says. It says get your ass back to work and get that cotton. So I just think that if you limit the exposure to certain communities, then they are not going to question. They're not going to ask for more. They're going to be thankful that they're not in the 90s and say, well, you know what? As one of the commenters loves to say, as Black Americans, we're the richest in the world. We should be thankful that you're not picking cotton. Be happy.
Yeah, I wonder where that person is getting his gas now with the war that is started in Iran, because that's the
Maybe they're
third.
growing corn and then they're just making their own gas. I don't know.
So the third receipt with respect to
And don't
politics
come after me because I don't want to read it.
is the war tax. At the end of February, we saw the United States and Israel bomb Iran. And as a part of that conflict, over the last week or so, we saw the shit show decide that he was going to target the Strait of Hormuz. And effectively, by doing that, 20% of the oil that comes through the Strait of Hormuz is going to the world in terms of gas, in terms of fuel, in terms of agriculture. And so it's like, you listen to these individuals and they're sitting in these rooms and they're going, well, we didn't think that they would actually close it. So again, individuals making decisions that have impact on Len and her going to Walmart to get, her fresh produce, or her going to Costco to get her tea or whatever the hell else you drink from Costco, and how that's impacting you. You don't drive, so it's not impacting your gas consumption. From that,
Why don't I
why?
drive?
Because you hate driving and you're a
I don't.
terrible
I don't
driver?
hate. I'm not a terrible. That is
Yeah,
subjective.
yeah.
I have not been in any accidents, so
That doesn't mean that you're not a bad driver.
I am a great driver. I mean, I'm not great, but I can drive.
You literally try to do four
John,
things
get
at
back on
the
the
same time.
subject. What?
You literally try to do four things at the same time while you're driving.
Sir, have you been in the car with me?
Yes.
Are you still here to have a conversation? I'm fine.
When you think about what's going on with respect to the war in Iran, what are your thoughts?
I always find it interesting. I used to have these conversations with nationalists that people are like, who cares what's happening in the rest of the world? We need to take care of people here. Okay, so we live in the world. So geopolitical decisions can impact your individual household. So higher fuel prices, grocery bills, increase in cost of living. Help me to understand how you don't see that we're part of this world and those geopolitical decisions impact. So yes, we will be nationalists and we'll take care of things, but we're part of this world and we're not insular. We can't do everything ourselves within America.
When you have 1/5 of the world's, oil supply coming through the strait, the thing that bothers me is you have the Americans. I think we're good at some things, but we're not very smart when it comes to world politics.
I don't know if it's being smart or not. It's hubris
Being informed.
and just we are arrogant. We are a very arrogant population where we think that because we have been the superpower forever, that people will bend to our will. Like if I say jump, you say how high, rest of the world. And so I just think that there's small shifts, some kind of shift where people are like, I won't be jumping. This is what's going to happen to you.
Yeah, I think you're right. We looked at the fact of politics. We have 3 receipts, 3 arenas, 1 platform, 1 pattern. And the education costs increase, the funding costs in terms of Len being able to get her mud tea, that's increased. The geopolitical conditions and decisions that are being made obviously are costing your quality of life and daily life to be impacted. In each case, the institution that made the decision, whether it was the shit show and his administration or someone else, they did not factor in, or they did, and they didn't care who was going to be the brunt of absorbing the decisions and the consequences of those decisions that they made. And so that responsibility moved downstream, as responsibilities typically do. And so from that standpoint, one of the things that we need to be able to do is identify those patterns and, more importantly, put things in place that will allow us to parry those things from happening. And so finally, we turn to the area of edutainment, and something that I was thinking about this week. Do you stream BET Plus?
John, move on.
That's a no. So Paramount obviously decided, are you familiar with the battle between Paramount and Netflix for control over Warner Brothers Discovery? So Warner Brothers Discovery decided that they were going to be putting themselves up for sale. As a part of that, they decided that they wanted to partner potentially with Netflix. And so Netflix had a bid. In come Paramount, which is close friends with the shit show. Okay, Larry Ellison, who's from Texas, owns Oracle. His son, David Ellison, owns Paramount. The Ellisons, decided that they had to have Warner Brothers Discovery. Part of the reason they wanted Warner Brothers Discovery is because David Ellison is a failed actor who wanted to use his daddy's money.
Well, he should have got on the Hallmark Channel. He would have been a superstar.
So in the last 2 years, he has acquired Skynet, and he now decided that he wanted Warner Brothers Discovery. Now that gives him HBO. That would give him CNN. That would give him Turner. And that would give him the library of Warner Brothers in terms of the movies. And so part of the conversation that they were having with the shit show was, once they acquire Warner Brothers Discovery, how do they do to CNN what it is that they've done to CBS? Meaning, how do we neuter it so that it's not CNN as you and I know it, but we make it more friendly to the shit show? And so when we think about media, whether it's Paramount, whether it's NBC Universal, whether it's Disney, whether it's Fox, you have now a lot of the distributors or owners of mass media in the hands of these 5 conglomerates. What say you about that?
I see that's terrifying, because we've talked about this in different conversations, that diversity is important, right? And so when you have 5 people and they control the narrative, and that becomes the truth. So I think that it becomes very important for other avenues to tell their truth.
The other thing that jumped out with the BET thing was Tyler Perry was a minority owner of BET Plus. And BET Plus was the streaming platform, obviously, of BET. And Paramount, full disclosure, Paramount has owned BET for a long time. But over the weekend, it was announced that Paramount was buying out Tyler Perry's stake in BET Plus. That means that BET, literally Black Entertainment Television, is now will be controlled owned fully by Paramount.
I will be telling you, Black people, what it means to be Black. Let me tell you about Blackness.
So
it'd
this
be
is
like Jack Harlow? I've become more Black, or whatever he is.
Jesus. I saw that, Jack Harlow. So
I'll tell you how to become more Black.
He said, I became blacker. He
became blacker, so he's going to show us all how to become blacker. I love this for us.
So, but what I did was I went to Amazon, which I hate. Whatever reason, I have to have it for now. And I went in and canceled my membership to BET Plus. I can't remember why I had it.
Your selective cancellations. Yeah. Like there's some things that you're just like, I'm done with this, and everything's like, well, I got to watch my sports. You just need to stop with this. You can't just do it.
You know what? I blame you. I blame you for that.
You can blame it on your roots. You showed up roots.
I would not have BET Plus if you would not have asked me to watch
the diarrhea, whatever it was.
Something from Detroit. Yes.
I love that show. Yes, it was amazing.
Because it was only on BET.
Fortunate, that's why I got BET Plus, just for that, and then I cancel it again. I was like, when she comes back, then I'll get it again.
So I just canceled it. But the problem is this, and this happened with the drunkard who is over now Department of Defense. So because during his drunk press conference last week.
Wow, dude. Yes. Allegedly.
No, not allegedly. He's drunkard. So during his drunkard press conference last week, he had the nerve to say, I'll be so glad when the Ellisons own CNN so we can stop this madness. So I'm paraphrasing there.
Wow, I love this. The government now controls the media. Well, they already did, kind of. And now we're going to go ahead and explicitly have propaganda.
It gets worse, because then you have...
Worse or better, because this is amazing.
No, then you have Brendan Carr, who's the FCC head, say last night or this morning that he is going to look at punishing the networks who have anything bad to say about the war in Iran.
You need to stop. People need to be outraged over this.
Yeah.
What about freedom of speech? What about that? What about the protection of the media? What about any of these constitutional, I don't know if that's a constitutional right, but I know freedom of speech is. Help me to understand what is happening and why everybody continues to allow these boundaries to be muddied and become invisible and non-existent.
Well, and so that's the part that bothers me about media consumption or media controlling the different outlets and these five media outfits controlling the majority of the media outlets, because it then does fall on consumers. It does fall on Len, John, and others to have alternative ways to be able to get that information out, or to be able to try to not be impacted by the things that we just talked about with Brendan Carr and with the shit show and with the drunkard.
And so we can see how that turned out. We already know how the story ends. We've had versions of the same story for the last 10 years. We already know how this ends because people aren't going to do any research. They're not going to think. They're just going to consume. It becomes the book 1984. Just you tell me how to think, you tell me what to do, and then I do it. I'm never going to question anything. And especially, again, we'll go back to the whole politics of not having kids go to school where they learn anything or they're questioning things. We just feed them the information. This is not going to end well for consumers and for people that are watching this movie play out or reading this book and like, what is happening here?
I think that from that standpoint, we've become, as you said, we've become a consumption economy.
So we're already a consumption economy. We're becoming more of a consumption economy.
The final part I want to make about edutainment is streaming. And we're talking about now Paramount owning a huge chunk in terms of the streaming platform. And so as a creative, one of the things that you think about if you're developing content, it used to be, because as we're recording this, the Oscars is tonight. Okay. And we know that there are going to be a lot of individuals who are going to be sitting in that theater who are going to be making or have the potential to make a lot of money. Unfortunately, that has changed with respect to the amount of money that some of these creatives will be able to make on the back end. It used to be that Len could make a movie and Len could then license that movie out to these studios. And over the course of the life of that movie, she would continue to get paid. Now with streaming, they've changed how it is that they're paying out on the movies and the music. And so these individuals, in terms of how they consider it's, I believe that now a view is if Len watched something for a minute, maybe two, that's considered a view. And that may be paid out at a smaller rate than if Len watches an hour, 90 minutes of a movie.
Well, that was one of the demands of the 2023 Writers Guild of America strike. That was one of the things, is that those residual payments are getting smaller, and that streaming companies' success wasn't being translated to the content providers, the writers, the artists, the whatever. That was one of the central demands of that. I don't know what can be done and what we should be demanding, because streaming has obviously taken over. I don't even have regular TV. I just have a bunch of streaming agreements with these different, I don't even know what I have. I think everything except apparently BET Plus, but I have everything else. And so I just find it interesting that that has become the go-to, that people have canceled their traditional cable and they've gone to streaming, but we don't think about the impact to the actual creators, the artists, whatever. But every year we're paying more to have access to these streaming channels every single year.
So you think about, what is it, 5 years ago, it's before COVID, where everyone had the boxes and we were like, get rid of Dish and DirecTV.
What box?
And let's Dish and DirecTV.
Oh, haven't had cable in. I mean, I don't do checks either. I'm sure you still write a check, Luddite.
So before streaming, obviously you had DirecTV and you had Dish, and so the big movement was cut the cord, move to streaming because it was cheaper. Now the streaming prices, you get one each year telling you that, hey, we're going from $6 a month to $8.99 a month, and it's like, okay, but I am getting shitty shows still. And
not only that, John, but because it's so disconnected that you don't realize how much it is. And in this household, my mom, she was talking about, what's the Hulu password? Because she was open with Disney Plus. I said, Mom, I have Disney Plus. Why are we paying for the same subscription? This makes no sense.
Communication. So I get it. I understand it. I love the fact that we went through the cut the cord movement, but I'm also cognizant of the fact that at the end of the day, the consumer, the end user, is paying for that with respect to some of the decisions. The
They're
final point I
paying
want
for it, and then the artists are suffering for it because they're not getting compensated the way they need to because of the way it's structured with the streaming companies and those residual income or the residual payments.
But the flip side of the streaming aspect is that artists are getting a lot more visibility. And so you have the visibility aspect that's coming into play, meaning that if I am Doja Cat or if I'm Jack Harlow, I can get online and I can talk about me being blacker. I can talk about the things that matter to me, and I'm increasing my brand, which allows me to make revenue that I would not have made.
So we'll go back to what you said, I think it was last week. Is the goal to be nominated or to get the award? So is the goal to just have the visibility and have somebody else get paid off of your visibility, or to actually get paid for being me? Like, you're getting the network, those streaming networks are getting paid for me. I
I
am
get it.
getting the opportunity. I'm not getting a guarantee. I'm getting the opportunity to make more money if I am savvy, if I am doing a lot of the work on my own, doing a lot of the marketing, promotion, whatever. You're giving me the opportunity, but day one, you're getting paid off of me.
Yeah, look, that's the economy that we're living in right now. The economy that we live in right now is the artist is responsible for doing more of the stuff. I know you went to a concert a couple of weeks ago where you saw New Edition and Boyz II Men and Tony Braxton. And as a part of that, I'm assuming when you walked into that show, there were vendors outside that were selling their merchandise, right? And that merchandise and that cost a certain aspect in terms of price. They were getting paid there. I'm also assuming that as a part of that show, there's a huge chance that it was being recorded and it's going to be then repackaged for content for those individual artists who put on their platforms, right? Additional part of that was those artists could do live streams or other things that would allow them to make additional revenue leading up either to that show or occurring after that show. And that allowed them to then develop that brand or continue to build out the ecosystem of either New Edition, Tony Braxton, or Boyz II Men. So there's a trade-off with respect to that. Now, I say all that to say that there's some good parts of the invisible load because it does push us in ways that allows us to be more creative, allows us to combat some of the things that we need to combat with respect to the price we may be spending for Len to have Hulu, not only for herself, but for, her mom to have Hulu. But at the same time, we still need to be cognizant of the fact that there are decisions that are being made that are beyond our control that are costing us dollars. What final point do you have to say about that?
I say that is your capitalist self having a debate with your other self. You love aspects of it, but there are things that happen downstream that are impactful to the people actually participate. And for me, I do try and look at it from a financial situation. I try and look at it from both the business and the individual. I guess for me, I land more on the individual and the community and less for the corporations. I think the corporations are fine. You're making tons and tons of money. And for you to survive and for you to be relevant, you need talent. You're exporting that talent and you're not paying people for the talent. And that's where I have a problem. For your promise that I got you on here, so now maybe you can make no, you're gonna go ahead and give me my dollar right now.
Yes, I get it. I understand it. And you're right. It is that fine line that as a capitalist, I do have to walk with respect to what's good.
You need to pick a world, babe. You need to pick a lane because you riding the white line in the middle with the driver like me. God knows what'll happen to you.
So that brings us to this episode and where we started with how it is that as a community we have to do better, and how it is that invisible load that we talk about carrying, we have to recognize it. From a cultural standpoint, we are expected to carry the weight. We do that with respect to the conversations that we have and making certain that we have the communication. If we're going in the right direction, who is going to be doing what? From the standpoint of Pastor Jamal Bryant and Nina Turner and the individuals who are on the ground in Minnesota, making certain that everyone understands their role and everyone understands what good looks like, what success looks like. We have to have those conversations. From a politics standpoint, understanding that there are going to be geopolitical things that happen that are out of our control. But that comes back to making certain that we vote and we put people in place and in office who have our best interests at heart. And that means that when they're doing foul shit like Doge did, to call them out and hold them accountable, and not allowing it to be, okay, well, it's just happening at that agency, or it's just happening in that community, or it's just happening with this particular subset of people. Because as we've seen, you can have a 21 or 22-year-old go in and decide, hey, I don't like an individual wearing bangs today. So ChatGTP, give me all the grants that deal with bangs. Okay, we're going to cut that. We're going to cut that out. Because if it is dealing with bangs, they're probably dealing with a woman. And I'm not liking women today. So I'm going to go in, and anything that is associated with bangs, even though men can have bangs, we're going to cut. And thirdly, when we talk about entertainment, making certain that the shows, the creatives, at the weight that they're carrying, we recognize, and more importantly, we understand that when we have a consolidation of the industry with respect to media, and those medias deciding that Lynn is not black and Lynn is going to be listening to what used to be black entertainment television, now called something else, or that the creatives who develop the content are being paid pennies on a dollar while the expansion of that content is being received worldwide, then that's a problem. And we're paying for that, and we're seeing that increase with respect to the monthly nut that we're having to pay these shows. So once that weight that was invisible becomes now visible, then we have a decision to make and we have a choice to make. And so with that choice, Ms. Lynn, what do you have planned for this week?
Well, before we do that, what I want to make sure that I heard and I want to reinforce is that it's important to be proactive. It's important to be thoughtful and to think A through Z instead of A to B, because that work is going to be a lot easier than waiting to be reactive and undo something. So be thoughtful in all three of those domains on the onset. It's going to require you to put down whatever device you have and to do some work, but it's easier and better to do it on the onset than the afterwards, again, being a leader. Now, what do I have planned for this week? Not a damn thing, sir. I am so excited. No travel this week. It's spring break for the kids, so I don't know. And get this, I think it's supposed to be 90 degrees today. So I left Chicago yesterday and it was snowing. That was the best time I had there when the snow. Came home to 90 degrees. It's supposed to drop down to the feast tomorrow. I can't wait. So I don't know, just post up, watch some movies, hang out, decompress. Oh, what about you, sir?
Absolutely nothing.
Yes, we have a nothing week. Yay.
Yeah. Well, you know what? What I may even do this week is I may even look at some comments.
Everybody, get out there and make sure you give him his comments, because I'm tired of sending it to him and I don't even think he reads them. So make sure you direct him right at Mr. John. Let's direct him to Mr. John, or as I like to call, Massa.
So let's bring this all together. And across this episode, we looked at three different systems: culture, politics, and entertainment. Three different arenas, one consistent pattern. Culture decides who is expected to carry the weight. Politics decides where institutions place the weight. And entertainment shows us how the weight becomes invisible. And once the weight becomes invisible, the system never has to explain it again. It just continues. Now, connect that back to where this series started. In Intent versus Impact, we said that leadership is not judged by what it meant, but what it does. It is judged by what actually happened. And when leadership fails to build the structure ahead of time, the consequences don't disappear, they move. In Reform Theater, we said the most dangerous gap in any institution is the gap between the pitch and the contract, because that gap is where extraction happens, quietly, consistently, and at scale. This episode, we answered the next question. When that gap opens, who observes it? The person with the most capacity, the most stability, the most reliability, or the builder? And here's the part that most people miss. The invisible load doesn't arrive as a burden. It arrives as an expectation. No one announces it. No one assigns it. You demonstrate that you can carry something once, and the system reorganizes around that demonstration. So what's the point? The point is not to stop carrying responsibility. That's not realistic. That's not leadership, and that's not how anything gets built. The point is to separate what is yours from what is routed to you. Because if you don't make that decision, your capacity will be used to stabilize systems that were never designed to support you. So here's the execution. Before you extend, renew, deepen, or commit to anything over the next 30 days, ask one question. Was this responsibility explicitly assigned to you, or did you absorb it because you could handle it? If it was assigned to you, honor it. If it's absorbed by you, evaluate it. If it needs to be renegotiated, renegotiate it.
If it needs to be redistributed, then redistribute it. Because sovereignty is not about carrying less weight, it's about carrying the weight on purpose. And if you miss that distinction, you won't burn out immediately, you won't stabilize everything around you, but you will quietly deplete yourself. That's the invisible load. And once you can see it, you can decide differently. While you're out and about this week, make the time to do something nice for yourself. And while you're at it, take the time to do something nice for someone else. Until next time, we'll talk to you.
And that's a wrap. Thank you for listening and spending your time with us on I Take Your Point. For more unfiltered conversations like this, click the link in the description. Huge thank you to our production team. We couldn't do this without you. Quick disclaimer, the views shared are those of the host and guest and are for informational purposes only, not professional advice. Keep building your own table, take care, and be well.